I'm Kriti Mehta. You're watching the World Report now on NewsX World. Let's start with a check of the top headlines this hour. Federal officials are standing firm on their account of the Minneapolis shooting as video evidence appears to contradict key elements of their narrative. The case has intensified political scrutiny, public anger, and renewed debate over federal law enforcement accountability in the U.S. Protesters gather in Minneapolis to demand federal immigration agents leave after a 37-year-old man is fatally shot by Border Patrol, intensifying local outrage. Governor Tim Walz calls on President Trump to withdraw the agents as demonstrations and political tension grow over the incident. China said on Monday that a preliminary trade deal with Canada does not target any third parties after the U.S. threatened to impose 100% tariffs on Canadian products if the agreement were finalized. The Kremlin on Monday said the U.S. trilateral talks in the UAE between Russian and Ukrainian negotiators had been held in a constructive spirit, but that there was still significant work ahead. Meanwhile, over 1,300 apartment buildings in Kyiv remain without heating after Russian missile and drone attacks. Ukraine says a wave of strikes hits the energy grid, cutting power to 1.2 million properties nationwide. Netanyahu's office says the Gaza-Egypt crossing will reopen in a limited manner once the search for the last remaining Israeli captive's body is completed, as authorities face growing pressure to allow humanitarian aid into the enclave. Philippine authorities are searching for survivors after a passenger ferry sinks in southern waters, leaving at least 18 dead and many still missing. A massive storm leaves over 1 million households without power and more than 10,000 flight cancellations across the U.S. Officials warn of life-threatening conditions from Texas to New England as at least 3 storm-related deaths are reported. All right, viewers, on to the top focus now. Russia's Kirill Dmitriev is now saying that Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is slowing progress on a settlement by delaying decisions on territorial issues. Dmitriev, who's Russia's special presidential representative for investment and economic cooperation and CEO of the Russian Direct Investment Fund, criticized Zelensky's recent comments in Davos. Dmitriev says Zelensky's refusal to accept territorial concessions is holding up peace efforts. The Russian official warned that continued delays could stall negotiations on resolving the Ukrainian conflict. And now welcome Collins Chong-Yu-Keat, Foreign Affairs, Security and Strategy Analyst from Kuala Lumpur in this discussion. Collins, thanks very much for joining us. Now, the contention that Russia's envoy is raising is, of course, something that is important to Zelensky and something that he would not want to budge on. But how do you think the negotiation can go on with these maximalist demands of Russia if it does not, give some leeway to Ukraine on the question of territory?
Well, this has been a key, roadblocks that we have seen how this has stalled the peace process, and Moscow is well aware of the insistence, the stance of Kyiv, in these regions, especially over Donbass and other occupied areas, and of course these demands contradict with Ukraine's insistence on territorial integrity, but the messaging, the narrative being brought, of course, is to shift the blame on the stalled negotiations onto Kyiv, and we have seen how by publicly, claiming that Ukraine is delaying peace, so Russia is also signaling to the Western audience that Kyiv has to compromise on these regions, and these have been the key proponents on what have caused the stall, and the stall negotiations and the delay in the peace process, and of course also this is meant to legitimize the positions of Ukraine abroad, and also to pressure the Western mediators to push Kyiv further towards concessions. These have been the key issues. We have seen that for the past few months now. And of course, these claims resonate with the local domestic Russian audience that portray, the Kremlin as the one that has been, all for peace, while external actors, especially Ukraine, has been the one that has been, stalling the whole process. So, and this will also, create further legitimacy on the part of Moscow. And of course, this will complicate matters, and also will compel the mediators, the Western partners, also to push Kyiv further on this. But I don't foresee that this will be the main stumbling block. We have seen how President Trump has been well aware, as of course he has grown, frustrated on this, dragging of this process by both sides, including on Zelensky himself, and we have seen this delay in terms of this process taking place in parallel now. So, but in the next couple of days, in the next couple of weeks, this will be the main stumbling blocks. But of course, there will be tit for tat moves. There will be accusations on both sides that the other party is not ready for the total peace agreement. But I don't foresee that this will be the main contentious point. President Trump, through the of course the trusted mediators, of course also with Jared Witkoff, I foresee that they have the wisdom to compare both sides to navigate this tricky path ahead, and I'm optimistic about the outcome for the next couple of weeks from now.
Right. Collins, now despite the US giving 100% security guarantees to Zelensky as asked, and with your opinion, and also helping it with a loan package of about 90 billion euros, Ukrainians still feel that their safety is far from guaranteed. What's your comment?
Well, we have seen how this is necessary to keep the pressure on Moscow, to keep the pressure on President Putin, to ensure that the Western alliance, the Western support will still be there. And the absence of this support, we will see, even more bold moves by Putin to pressure both sides, to pressure the West and to pressure Kyiv. And this is also as part of the leverage in terms of the whole negotiating process. And of course, we have seen how also this is also being used as a strategic leverage and tool by Washington to ensure that Ukraine doesn't get the whole things that it wants, and getting the whole package will mean that Ukraine will not be motivated or not be pushed to be also part of the entire peace process, and this conflict will prolong for years to come. So, and this has to stop now. President Trump has been crystal clear in that this will need to end now, and that I don't see that there's this compelling need for both sides to drag this further, and Kyiv and Moscow will have to work things out. And President Trump has been trying for months now to ensure that both sides will get the some sort of of course both sides will not get the full the objective that they will want, especially for Ukraine, the contentious issue on the zones and the territories. And of course, President Trump will expect Ukraine, and especially Zelensky, also to have some compromises on those aspects, and for the whole peace process to go through. And absence of this, give and take and some compromise, then we will see this continuation of this protracted conflict, and more lives will be lost, and that there's no reason for both sides now to come to the talking, and the talking points and the dialogues, if both sides are still insistent on this on holding their ground. So the President Trump has been strategic, but his patience might be running thin, and he's the only savior that can compel both sides to eventually come to this agreement. And both sides will need to be wise now, because failing to do so will mean that there will be extra costs on both sides in terms of lives, in terms of destruction, in terms of the of course the economic and financial toll, and this will be totally unwise for both sides.
Right, Collins, thanks for your comments. I requested to stay on.
Okay.
And now moving ahead, viewers, at the third North Sea Summit in Hamburg, European Union Commissioner for Energy Dan Jorgensen has reaffirmed Europe's commitment to ending its reliance on Russian energy. Jorgensen emphasized that Europe will not revert to its previous dependency, focusing instead on green energy security and preventing energy weaponization by Russia. The European Union announced plans to permanently ban Russian gas, phasing out LNG imports by December 31, 2026, and pipeline gas by September 30, 2027. Leaders including Germany and the United Kingdom signed the Hamburg Declaration to enhance energy security and provide protection for critical infrastructure. The summit aims to turn the North Sea into a green energy hub. Jurgensen stated, "We will never go back to energy blackmail and economic exposure." Listen in.
Das erste Gipfeltreffen war eine sehr direkte Reaktion auf Russlands schrecklichen Angriffskrieg auf die Ukraine und die daraus entstandene Energiekrise. Der Gipfel hat damals ein wichtiges Signal gesendet. Wir als Nordseeländer stärken unsere Zusammenarbeit, um die Nordsee zu einem Kraftwerk in Europa zu machen. Und damit steht der Gipfel für unsere Unabhängigkeit, die wir gemeinsam stärken wollen. Dieses
Request Collins to join me back in the discussion here. Collins, how prepared do you think Russia really is to lose its European importers?
Well, I don't see, this. I don't see the possibility of Europe to jettison its, dependence on Russian oil and gas anytime soon. Now, although we have seen progress has been made, and President Trump has been validated for his argument that it doesn't make any sense for Europe to continue to rely on Russian gas, while at the same time also to solicit greater, U.S. security umbrella. So we have seen now. Although efforts have been made to reduce dependency on Russian energy, still, and this transition towards this new energy and the green energy, have been at the cost of greater European economic resilience, and coupled with these new settings in terms of from the eastern flank, from Russia, of course, in the Arctic. And,
yeah, I'm not getting sound.
I don't foresee
audio.
that
Yes, can you check?
this will be the main factor that will, be at the forefront of EU-Russia relations, and the EU will still be in need of Russian energy for now, and that and of course, the rhetoric has been that this shouldn't be at the expense of the European interests at large, and that of course also seeing how this potential weaponization of energy by Russia might harm the future security interests of Europe as a whole. But seeing how progress has been done for the past couple of years now, the transition has been uneven across different nations and different areas, and of course Russia still has that options in place, but he has not fully utilized that. And of course we have seen how now with the recent distraction in Greenland, and the need also to consolidate European unity on that issue. I don't foresee that this will be one of the main point of priority for the broader European nations with regards to changing their energy policies soon, and to foresee this greater potential threat from Russia in that aspect.
Right. Where do you think now Europe is going to get diverted to get its gas supplies?
Well, we have seen how Europe has been further pressured. It's now between a rock and hard place in seeing how on one hand it has tried very hard in terms of the whole energy transition processes.
No,
and
no.
of
Then
course also
I'll
we've seen
come on
how
my
he has faced
phone.
pressure from
There
the
may be
US in terms of increasing its own defense and security spending. At the same time also. There is a parallel need to increase to have this to meet the rising energy demands, and you can't source that from Russia. Of course, we have seen a lot of these energy friendshoring efforts, fallback options, but they don't guarantee long-term support energy supply in terms of the whole supply chain equation. So Europe will still be in need of the quick fix of getting the conventional energy from Russia, from the US also, and it cannot run away from this utopian. From this reality and to join the bandwagon of this utopian dream of having its own energy security and energy independence, as what President Trump has achieved for the US. But I don't foresee the same case for Europe, at least in the next couple of years from now, And meanwhile, during this timeline, Europe will still need to rely on Russia and the US mainly for their own energy supply, energy security.
All right, Collins, thanks then very much for joining me and helping us with the opinion. And now moving ahead, viewers, UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer has defended the decision to block Andy Burnham from standing in an upcoming by-election, saying it was necessary to avoid diverting resources from important elections in May. Starmer stressed that Labour needed to focus on campaigns in Wales, Scotland and England, particularly amid the cost of living crisis. Starmer explained the NEC decision was based on a need to avoid an unnecessary mayoral election in Manchester. Burnham was not commented directly on the leadership issues or allegations of personal conflict. Despite the dispute, both leaders have worked closely together on key projects, including the Northern Powerhouse Rail. Let's in fact listen into what Starmer said.
Andy Burnham's doing a great job as the Mayor of Manchester, but having an election for the Mayor of Manchester when it's not necessary would divert our resources away from the elections that we must have and that we must fight and win. And resources, whether that's money or people, need to be focused on the elections that we must have, not elections that we don't have to have. And that was the basis of the NEC.
And let's now cover some news from Japan, where Prime Minister Takaichi has pledged a significant shift toward a responsible, proactive fiscal policy in hopes of making Japan stronger and more prosperous. This statement was made during a debate with the opposition party leaders ahead of the country's snap election scheduled for February 8. Takaichi's remarks reflect her vision for Japan's future economic strategy, focusing on fiscal responsibility as a key pillar. Let's listen in to her statements.
責任ある積極財政への大転換、訴えさせていただきます。日本列島を強く豊かにするためにこれは必要なことです。特にリスクを最小化する危機管理投資、そして未来への成長を作っていく成長投資。
Remember, viewers, Japan is headed for a snap election on February 8 that Takaichi has called for. Amidst this, she has, of course, promised to revive the economy of the country as she prepares just 3 months after becoming the first woman Prime Minister of the country for elections. Yen has also risen to more than 2-month high, but the markets are on alert for any intervention as of now. The statement that Takaichi made was during a debate with opposition party leaders ahead of elections snap polls scheduled for February 8, and her comments, of course, reflected her vision for Japan's future economy and the fiscal responsibility of the country. She said, pledging a significant shift towards a responsible, proactive fiscal policy in Japan. Now, joining me in this discussion is retired Major General G.G. Dwivedi, who is a professor of international relations and strategic studies at New Delhi. General, thanks very much for joining me in this discussion. Firstly, how do you see Takaichi will be able to deliver on her promises on the economy of Japan and working on its fiscal responsibility?
Thank you, Preeti. Actually, Prime Minister Takaichi has been in power only since last October, and this snap poll has been called because of, I think, a certain rationality and also a strategy. Because right now, if you look at Japan's, internal affairs and also the external environment, well, internally, Japan's economy is almost stagnant, and there's a very low rate of inflation. At the same time, public confidence in the government is also low because they are not very certain as to can Japan take a strong response in case of internal issues and also external dynamics. And if you see externally, Prime Minister Takaichi had strained kind of, I would say, conversation and vis-a-vis China, because there was the issue on Taiwan, and in the parliament she said that in case Taiwan is threatened by Chinese, then possibly Japan would also willy-nilly get involved. Now that strained the relation with China. And at the same time, also relations with North Korea and, the aggressive stance of North Korea on the Korean Peninsula and Russia, all these are put together that the external environment of Japan also are very demanding and concerning. So keeping all this view in mind, possibly Prime Minister Takaichi feels that in case the snap polls are now which have been ordered, would strengthen her position of a party. She'll get a better mandate and also lift the confidence of the people and also follow a strong or a proactive economic strategy that is focus on growth, on the fiscal health, and also manufacturing, technology, and semiconductors. All these actually would give momentum and impetus to the Japanese economy. So keeping all these views in mind, both the external and internal environment, Takaichi has taken decision for the snap poll, hoping that she'll emerge stronger, and that will give her more leeway to undertake progressive reforms.
Yeah.
Kirti.
Other than the external factors, what do you think General has contributed to her falling approval ratings? The ratings have fallen from 5 to 10% as per different surveys.
Well, that ratings are very flexible because they can actually take a hit due to certain circumstances. One could be that this tension between Japan and China, because that is not in the, I would say, larger interest of Japan, especially because Japan has deep interest in the Chinese. Second point is that there's a lot of internal factionalism also within the the Liberal Democratic Party, that is the ruling party. There's a lot of factionalism. You see, after Shinzo Abe, who had, of course, about 8 years of continuous, was in power. After that, there have been frequent changes of the Prime Minister. So also internal factionalism also plays a major role. And combined with that, the overall, security dynamics, how North Korea, Russia together, the North Korean aggressive approach against South Korea, all these actually are building up. And, Japanese are very sensitive to the external environment. And finally, the economy has actually stagnated. Nothing very, positive has happened. So I think these are the factors which possibly there is a drop in the decline in the, the rating. But I think that is temporary because the ratings are, very flexible, and they can actually go up and down on a couple of issues which maybe even look smaller, but they have implications. Kirti.
Right. General, to continue to stay on with me, there's some more news that we'd like to discuss with you. Moving ahead now, viewers, Canada's Prime Minister Mark Carney is likely to visit India in early March as Ottawa steps up efforts to diversify trade away from the United States. That's in fact some breaking news details that we are giving you. India's High Commissioner to Canada has said that Carney's trip could include agreements on uranium, energy, critical minerals, artificial intelligence and quantum computing. A 10-year uranium supply deal worth about 2.8 billion Canadian dollars is also under discussion. The visit would coincide with the launch of formal talks on a comprehensive economic partnership agreement, or CEPA, between India and Canada, expected to begin in March. Both countries are moving with urgency after stalled negotiations and growing uncertainty in global trade, including renewed tariff threats from the United States. Senior Indian ministers and security officials are also expected to visit Canada in the coming weeks, signaling a broader reset in ties between the two countries. All right, I now request General Dwivedi to join me back in the discussion here. Well, General, this is, of course, a very clear shift in policy from Trudeau. And Mark Carney, of course, is now looking to boost ties with India, also, of course, amid the tariff threats from the United States. How significant is this visit really going to be?
Oh, well, this visit is definitely very significant because after Prime Minister Mark Carney came to power, he has reset the relation between India and Canada, which are very important relationship. You know, during Trudeau's time, the relationship had taken a nosedive because of the, I would say, hostile or the anti-India policies by Trudeau. But Prime Minister Carney has brought the ties back on the rails. You know, Prime Minister Carney had invited, in fact, Prime Minister Modi for the G7 summit in Canada. And that was the start point for the ties to start looking up. The second very important point is Canada itself is now looking beyond USA to diversify its trade relations with the other countries. You know, after, in fact, Prime Minister Carney had visited China and signed a number of agreements. And at the same time, also, Canada sees India as a very important partner. And as you rightly said, that in the forthcoming visit, which is likely to take place sometime in the early March, a couple of agreements are going to be signed, especially on the uranium side, because that's one area where the agreement would be signed by something like about $2.8 billion agreement. And also, the comprehensive economic partnership agreement is also on the anvil. Currently, the trade between India and Canada is about $9 billion, but it is expected to be scaled up to something like $30 billion by the end of this decade. So I feel that this visit is very, very important. And also, in fact, this will actually take the relationship further forward. And Indo-Canadian relations, as I said, are very important relations. And this visit definitely will give further impetus and momentum to the bilateral relations. And we see that Canada actually is diversifying to India, and also that will have larger impact on the Canadian economy because, as I said, Canada has also, had recently visited, Canadian Prime Minister had visited China, and that also is sign of diversification. So I can as I can give a small summarized comment that this visit is very important. It will take the relationship further, scale it up, and this is, I think, the large interest of both Canada and India.
Right, General, we hope those relations, of course, are bettered, and for now,